Is your debt causing you sleepless nights? Knock your debt out with Debt KO. And your debt won't be the only thing keeping you up at night. Debt KO, free, impartial advice on all your debt.
This is something that comes along every now and then in generation, and it's special.
Andrew McCART, IFL TV, in association with MTK Global. I've got to say, I'm delighted. It's going to be tough for me asking somebody that asks questions, but let's see how we get on. DAZN host and presenter, Chris MANNIX. Chris, first and foremost, how are you enjoying the San Antonio bubble, if you are enjoying it at all?
You know, I've experienced a handful of bubbles in the last couple of months, whether it was working in the NBA and being part of their bubble over the summer, and now as whatever's boxing's doing. This is pretty good. It's pretty solid. What I'm most excited about, though, is for the first time getting fans back into a building. I've done a couple of fights now where you've had no crowd, and it's been weird. It's been really, really strange. The energy's been lacking, and I think the fights have suffered because of it. The Daniel Jacobs-Gabe Rosado fight, I think the fact that it was kind of a clunker in part was because there was no atmosphere for that fight. Having, I think, 12,000 in the building for Canelo Alvarez, Callum Smith, I think that's going to be really cool.
I totally agree. We've just got fans back in the UK. It was only 1,000 for Joshua Pulev, and I've been to a number of bubbles like yourself. I've been to like 6 or 7 shows back in the UK, no fans, and I share your sentiment when it's very, very weird. But the reason why we're in San Antonio, it's a huge, huge fight with Canelo against Callum Smith. Eddie Hearn himself has said this is the biggest fight of the year. Some might say Wilder Fury 2 out in Vegas back in February, but for you, you've been involved in many big fights with DAZN and probably beyond that as well. So how big is this fight for you?
I think Wilder Fury probably has it beat out because of the consequential nature of it and because it's heavyweights. Heavyweights always trump everything else when they're a big fight. But Canelo's the number one pound-for-pound fighter in boxing, in my opinion. Callum Smith is a top 10, top 15 type of fighter who I think is clearly the number one guy at 168 pounds. So it's a massive fight. And I mean, we can get into this, but there's a lot of people that are discounting Callum Smith here, and I don't get it. I think Canelo's great, but he's fighting for just like the third or fourth time above 160 pounds. Callum is comfortable at this weight. He is probably going to be the biggest, strongest fighter that Gennady Golovkin has faced. I mean, there are a lot of variables to this fight, a lot of layers to it, but I think this has the potential to be a fight of the year.
I echo that as well, because I use this as an example quite a lot, because when Lomachenko faced Teofimo Lopez, Lomachenko was the pound-for-pound number one in so many people's eyes, and then he just came up against the stronger, bigger man who matched him with some skill set, and obviously Teofimo got the win. Now, could we see the same thing happening here with Canelo and Callum Smith?
I think it's possible. I mean, Callum's not, no disrespect to Rocky Fielding, but not a lesser tier type of guy. It's interesting you bring up Lomachenko and Lopez, because I've been thinking about that fight a lot when it comes to this one. Lomachenko lost in part because he wouldn't let his hands go. Now, Canelo, it's not going to be about that with Canelo. He's going to pick his punches and he's going to let his hands go. My biggest question for Callum Smith coming to this fight is, will he? I don't believe you can jab your way to a win against Canelo. It just hasn't happened in the last few fights. I mean, Sergey Kovalev threw a lot of jabs. He was down on the cards when Canelo knocked him out. Daniel Jacobs didn't let his hands go in their fight. I mean, a lot of guys that face Canelo won't throw that big right hand because they know if they miss, there's something big coming right back at them, and that's the challenge. In talking to some people in Callum's camp, I get the sense he's going to let his hands go a little bit, and I think that's the right strategy. It might get you knocked out, but it's probably the only chance you have to win.
I was going to say that as well. Do you think a lot of people are more timid to let their hands go because we've seen how good Canelo is at slipping and dipping, and that shoulder roll now that he's sort of like, I don't know if he's took it from Mayweather or not, but he's very skillful in that shoulder roll now, and he comes back with his own left hook, right hand, left hook, or whatever it is to the body and all that. Do you think fighters are already beat before they get into the ring with Canelo? Well, some fighters are.
I think the fear of throwing that right hand is the biggest difference maker in all this. Now, Canelo's defense, it's really improved over the years, as you would imagine. As a guy gets a little bit older, better coaching, it gets better. He's more of like an elusive defensive fighter. He catches a lot of punches with his gloves. as well. And when he sees big punches coming, there was one shot in the middle rounds against Daniel Jacobs where he got hit, but he saw the punch coming and turned with it. So it didn't have the same kind of impact. He's just a really smart defensive fighter. I covered most of Sergey Kovalev's fights since he came to the U.S. in, I think it was 2011. I've never seen Kovalev that unsure of throwing his right hand. And that's because Canelo's speed is as good as anyone in and around this weight class in boxing. Like, he doesn't just hit hard, he hits fast. And as you know, it's not just how hard a guy hits. If you can't see that punch coming, it magnifies it tenfold. So that's what I'm wondering with Callum. Like, will he throw caution to the wind at times during this fight and throw that big right hand in the hopes of knocking Canelo back? Now, Canelo's got a great chin. I mean, we saw him in the second fight with Golovkin walk through some bombs. But Callum should be a bigger puncher than Golovkin. He should be the strongest fighter that Canelo has faced, including Kovalev. I'm anxious to see what kind of offensive strategy Callum has in this fight.
Well, talking about offensive strategy, I mean, when we saw the first face-off here, it was, I think the internet blew up with the size difference. There was memes going around and stuff like that. Callum it's like me, you standing here. You're quite, me facing off at you. But can we read too much in that height difference? Will that play a factor in this fight?
You know, it's funny. I brought that up to Canelo right after the weigh-in, and you could see him kind of smirking at me when I brought up the height difference. He just doesn't care. I mean, for starters, he's been fighting taller guys for most of his career. He's only about 5'8", so when he fights guys like Golovkin at 160 and again, obviously Kovalev, Rocky Fielding, Jacobs is about 6 feet tall. He's familiar with going up against bigger guys. He's really good at getting on the inside. The way to answer that question is it should be a difference maker in this fight if you're Callum Smith. You know, I don't like to judge a guy for his worst performance, but against John Ryder, Callum was just bad at keeping John Ryder from coming in on him. And if he fights the same way against Canelo, he's going to get knocked out. I mean, John Ryder just kind of crashed into him at times during that fight, and Callum just let him get there. Callum's got to use all 6'3" of that frame and keep Canelo off him. Like, he's got to keep him back throughout the course of this fight, because if Canelo gets on the inside, he's just a wicked body puncher, and that long torso has got to be. I mean, Team Canelo's got to be like salivating the idea of landing punches on that torso like he has to so many others.
I've read a few, not read a few articles, there's a few tweets and stuff like that saying that Callum will probably have to go in there and drop, hurt, maybe even knock Canelo out to get the win, because obviously we are in San Antonio. I know it's not Mexico, but there's going to be 12,000 probably Mexican fans there. So what do you think when you hear stories and tweets, you read tweets about Callum needs to go in there and stop Canelo? Do you think he can? And what do you think of them, those sort of like people writing them articles and tweets as well?
You know, I've never believed the whole idea of like, to beat the champ, you've got to knock out the champ or take the belt from the champ. It's not how it works. Once that first bell rings, you know, the belt's gone. Nobody's a champion anymore. That's how it should go. Canelo has been on the right side of several favorable decisions, several close decisions at least. I mean, Erislandy Lara, Austin Trout, you go down the list. I mean, he's had some, Golovkin, of course, the biggest one of them all. So he's had the benefit of the doubt from the judges. But that to me is not about, you know, judges favoring Canelo. That to me is about Canelo being one of the easiest fighters in boxing to score his fights. When he lands punches, you can tell. Like, there's no ambiguity with his punches. They just land. You can see them connect. You can hear them connect. Whereas with other fighters, sometimes you're like, well, did the guy block that? Did he, you know, was it, how big a shot was it? He's very easy to score in that way. So no, I don't think that Callum has to knock him out. But I don't think he can pitter-patter him either. I don't think he can do what Kovalev did. Kovalev threw a ton of jabs in that fight, and it was a good strategy in part. But they were soft jabs. They were just little, tiny jabs. Many of them didn't get through the guard, and the ones that did weren't all that impactful. So if you're Callum, you've got to throw punches with force. You've got to throw them with passion, or else, you know, Canelo is going to outscore you.
Eddie Hearn, we know that sometimes when he opens his mouth, he says things just to get a little bit of a bite from people and stuff like that. But he said to me in my interview with him that this fight isn't going 9 rounds. Now, he never said it was Canelo or Callum Smith. He just thinks it's going to be a stoppage. Can you see that as well? Can you see this fight going the full 12, or do you see a stoppage in this fight?
I think there'll be a stoppage at some point. And I base that largely on just my feeling that Callum is going to go for it. We know Callum knows the importance of this opportunity. He has been looking for this type of fight for years. Most of the fighters that won the World Boxing Super Series, they got big fights almost right afterwards. Alexander Usyk is a great example of that. Callum didn't get that. I mean, he has been waiting, fighting the Sam Nadams and the John Ryders and the other guys in that division. He knows that this is, I don't want to call it once in a professional lifetime, but it's close. It's rare. I think he's going to go out there and throw punches. I don't think he's going to take the same strategy that Rocky Fielding had or Sergey Kovalev had or even Daniel Jacobs had. I think he is going to take more chances than them. And with that comes the possibility you score a knockout, and with that comes the possibility that you also get knocked out. Look, I don't discount his chances to stop Canelo. We talk all the time about Canelo's chin, and it's great. But again, Callum's a big dude and a big puncher, and Canelo has never been hit by shots of a guy this large. So I think that strategy, controlled aggression, is a good one.
I've got to ask you as well, for whoever is the winner on Saturday night, who would you like to see the winner face? I mean, Billy Joe Saunders, a few weeks ago when he beat Martin Murray, has said that he wants the winner. Now, me and you aren't privy to the contract. We don't know if there's a rematch clause in there somewhere. But if there isn't a rematch clause and the fighters can move on, would you like to see them in with Caleb Plant, Benavidez, Billy Joe Saunders? For you personally, Chris, who would you like to see?
Well, I think, and look, you've talked to Callum, I think there is a rematch clause in the contract. I think and Callum has no problem with that, right? Like if you beat Canelo, there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow right there. Like you get that pile of money. So if Callum wins, there'll be another fight, probably in May or June in Las Vegas, hopefully when crowds are let back in, a whole pile of money for everybody all around. If Canelo wins, I'm still good with Golovkin 3. I mean, I think we're coming up on that expiration point for that fight. Golovkin's 38 years old. In April, he's going to be 39. He's getting some of his momentum back. He's starting to fight, starting to look like the old Gennady Golovkin. But if we get too deep into 2021 and even 2022, the fight just loses all its meaning. So give me Canelo Golovkin in May, settle the score, and then move on. Look, Caleb Plant, we as boxing fans know who he is, but casual fans do not. They're just not to him. Let Caleb Plant fight a David Benavidez. Fight for a unified version of that title. Fight for another belt. Fight Billy Joe Saunders if you have to. I think those other opponents could use 6 months to a year to build up their brand. And then when he gets through with Golovkin, then you move on to those fights. Those fights are still going to be there. The Golovkin fight, unfortunately, it's probably only got about 6 months left.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Golovkin. He's fighting tonight. I'll probably the bar's showing it downstairs if you want to go down and watch it. Yeah. Did you see Golovkin in the scales? My first part of this question, and how good did he look? And what's your thoughts on the Szeremeta fight itself?
Golovkin looks shredded, no question about that. Szeremeta just isn't in his class. Even Golovkin at 38 years old, if he doesn't walk through Kamil Szeremeta, there's something wrong with him. Kamil Szeremeta, the IBF, I don't know what they're doing. Like how you rank him as your top mandatory challenger is beyond me. The guy doesn't have a win over a top 15 opponent that's out there. But all that being said, this is, to me, is Golovkin's chance to regain some of the momentum that he lost. This is his chance to go out there and just stomp an opponent and look like the Gennady Golovkin we've seen in recent years. Really, since the second Canelo fight, we haven't seen the old Golovkin. Canelo was the first fighter to take the fight to Golovkin and succeed. Like, he went in there and accepted the challenge of going toe-to-toe, and he won. And after that, Steve Rolls, nice knockout, but the second round of that fight, he took some shots against a lesser fighter. Then comes Derevyanchenko. That was a war that I thought Golovkin lost. So go out, beat up Szeremeta, start to convince some fans out there that are still watching you that, no, 38, not a big deal. I'm still close to what I was, and that'll give you some momentum going into Canelo 3.
I've got to ask as well before I let you go and probably watch the Golovkin fight. It's going to be, as a Scottish Brit, I've got to ask, Fury and AJ. I mean, are you one of the fans stateside that his mouth is watering for that fight like us over in the UK?
I'm dying for it, man. And look, I know that there are a lot of variables here, but it's got to be in Great Britain, first of all. You got to get that in Wembley. You got to get that anywhere in the UK. You have to.
Thank you for saying that, Chris.
There's I've been to Saudi Arabia. It's fine. There's a pot of money for it. It's not my money. It's easy for me to say, but come on, let's make that fight in front of 90,000 fans in the UK. It deserves to be there. I love the fight. I mean, Fury is getting a lot of props as being the favorite early on, and I get that. I mean, he's coming off his best performance. AJ, still some questions about the chin, and can he withstand a Fury attack? But AJ is not Deontay Wilder. Fury can't walk towards AJ and just throw whatever he wants and not expect combinations to come back. With Wilder, it's one punch. You watch out for that hook or the straight right hand. With AJ, it's multiple combinations, and he's a great finisher. He catches you, he hurts you, and he puts you down, and he keeps coming after you. That's not to say he's going to win, but to me, it's a coin flip type of fight, and that's exactly what boxing needs. The heavyweight division badly needs that. I mean, there's so much talk about the belts and what's Usyk going to do, and do we have to give Wilder another shot? Forget that. Just drop all the belts. I don't give a damn. Call it the undisputed championship that's unrecognized. That the only thing that matters is AJ versus Fury sometime in the second half of 2021.
I probably agree with you, to be honest. Chris, DAZN launched out in the UK. Final question, for £1.99 or $2.50, as you say, in new money. Just give the fans why they should tune in to Canelo and Callum Smith. Obviously, the US fans as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Canelo and Callum Smith, it's going to be a war. I think they're going to have a street fight out there. And I love the quiet confidence that Canelo has. He just thinks he's better than everybody else. I'm not saying that he's arrogant. He thinks, I've put in the work. I've got the skills. I've got the great coach. There's nobody I can't beat. Can Callum Smith change all that? I think we'll know in the early rounds, too. I think we'll know if Callum lands a couple of big shots and gets the respect of Canelo. He's not going to just walk in on these shots. He doesn't want to take them all night long, but he's got to get on the inside. I think that's going to lead to a really interesting slugfest as we get in the third or fourth rounds. But DAZN in the UK, I mean, look, it's not just Canelo Smith. You're going to get Ryan Garcia and Luke Campbell, which is awesome, which is another fight that I just can't wait for. We'll be calling in a couple of weeks.
Well, there you go. You said it there. Chris, honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure. You're somebody that does my job, but on a bigger scale, so it's been how do you rank my question? That's one thing as well. But again, I'll probably speak to you off camera and pick your brains a little bit. But thanks for doing this for FL TV. I really appreciate it, and enjoy the fights tomorrow.
Anytime. Happy to do it.
Thanks very much, Chris. Thank you.
This is something that comes along every now and then in generation, and it's special.
Is your debt causing you sleepless nights? Knock your debt out with Debt KO. And your debt won't be the only thing keeping you up at night. Debt KO, free, impartial advice on all your debt.